Welcome to your November Influence newsletter. It's been quite a busy period on the policy front during the last few weeks. On the 7th of November, we had the state opening of Parliament by King Charles. This is where the government announces its legislative programme for the year. A big omission from this was really any mention of the government's corporate governance and audit reforms. There was no legislation planned for the conversion of the Financial Reporting Council into ARGA, which is an important plank of these reforms. And I have to say that they seem to be somewhat unraveling at the current time. The government about a month ago announced that it was abandoning a range of new corporate reporting requirements for large companies. And the Financial Reporting Council itself has decided it's not going to go ahead with many of the changes to the UK Corporate Governance Code that it was planning over the summer. So I guess the question is, where do we go from here? We seem to have moved away from the phase of thinking hard about how we address some of the shortcomings that became clear after the collapse of companies like Carillion and BHS. And we're going into a phase now where the desire to ensure that the regulatory and reporting burden on companies is kept as light as possible. The other big policy event of the last few weeks has been the autumn statement, which took place on the 22nd of November. And generally, from an IoD perspective, we were positive about what happened because, I mean, the keynote policy measure was making full expensing of qualifying capital expenditure a permanent feature of the UK tax system. And our members have told us that full expensing really does make a difference in terms of encouraging investment. And given how weak the economy is at the moment and the depressed levels of business sentiment, we think that this measure is important for the short term and also for the long term. However, tucked away in the autumn statement, and these are things that you only really discover when you read the associated large detailed report that's published alongside it, we found that there were a number of areas of policy that we were hoping would be the focus of policy action, which didn't really move forward in the autumn statement. There wasn't, for example, any big announcement around occupational health. Um, there's a big problem at the moment in that we have many inactive people in the workforce. About 2.6 million people are economically inactive due to long-term sickness or disability. Some kind of tax incentive to encourage the take-up of occupational health provision would have been a good feature of the autumn statement. But all that the government announced was the establishment of an expert group to develop a voluntary framework. So that was slightly disappointing. Also, there was very little in the autumn statement about addressing training and skills shortages. We were hoping again that the Chancellor might consider some kind of tax measure to allow training costs to be written off against tax. However, all that we got was the government committing to new guidance to be written by HMRC around parity concerning the deductibility of training costs, so which was not really as far as we were hoping to go. R&D tax credits were discussed in the autumn statement, and the Chancellor confirmed that a new merged regime will come into place on the 1st of April to replace the two existing schemes which exist. And the new regime will be significantly less generous than the old SME scheme. And the government's been very worried about non-compliance, about fraud in these schemes, but the reduced generosity of the new scheme means that there will be less public funds channeling through to supporting research and development, which we feel is unfortunate. We didn't see anything in the autumn statement about the issue of carbon leakage or the introduction of a carbon border adjustment mechanism, although the government has said that it will report on this issue at some point in the future. We did get a promise to expand the business visitor rules to allow easier, more frictionless business travel into the UK. And there was also discussion of an expansion of the UK Export Finance Scheme, which will assist SMEs in exporting, although we at the moment don't have any detail. I mean, going forward, we're about to now move into the COP28 conference, which, as always, will be something that we look at with great interest and great care. I'd also point you to an interesting podcast which has just been produced. It's entitled AI, the Hype and the Reality. It's a very good listen. And I think we're all trying to get to grips with this topic of the moment and trying to work out how AI is going to impact our businesses, and also engaging with many of the ethical dilemmas and issues which come to light as a result of the use of AI. So I do recommend listening to this podcast to get some further insights. Thank you.